Hey, do you think Jehovah's Witnesses were brave? I mean, there's enormous amount of fear that Jehovah's Witnesses live in. Were they brave people? I'm going to actually challenge you on this one. I want to know what you think. So, hear me out. A lot of Jehovah's Witnesses, they live in enormous amount of fear. They fear the outside world. They fear demons. They fear Satan. They fear apostates like crazy. To the point where I remember when I entered a Kingdom Hall, and there was this guy who was disfellowshipped for a while, and he kept coming to the meetings. I was just a minister, your servant back then, and he comes up to me and he says hi. I mean, I've seen him maybe for like almost a year going to the meetings, and he would never say hi to anybody. I came late. The brother behind me, the JW behind me, elder, he was singing already the song. And I walk in and he's saying, "Hi, how are you?" And I'm like, "Oh." I was shaking. I was scared. I mean, this scholarship person is trying to have a conversation with me at the Kingdom Hall with an elder standing right behind. And I'm ministerial servant trying to be an elder. I was shaking. I didn't know what to say. I said hi and I ran into the washroom like a chicken. I was scared. I didn't know what's going on. The whole meeting, I'm like, I have sinned. I'm not supposed to talk to him. I don't know if that's gonna jeopardize my chances of becoming an elder. I don't know if the elders are gonna talk to me. It was just crazy. The meeting ended, and I see everybody's talking to him. And I'm like, what? Why are they talking to him? I said, "Oh yeah, you missed the meeting last week. He was reinstated." And I'm like, "Whew, no more sin." It's crazy to think about it, but we were controlled so much that we were afraid of even being caught of saying hi to somebody. There's fear of everything. The first time I decided to read Crisis of Conscience, I locked the front door. I locked the door to this office. I was shaking. I remember my hand was shaking like this. I was scared of my own wife. I'm like, man, if she finds out, I'm dead. The fear was there all the time. People are afraid of giving comments at the meeting. They know the question, they know the answer. It's in the paragraph. They prepared previously being at home. And yet they go there. They know nobody will punish them. They know people will be happy to hear their answer. They know what the answer is. It's written. And yet there's this huge fear that what if something goes wrong? Most people, when they went on the platform, they were shaking like crazy. And you might say, well, yeah, everybody has kind of a fear of public speaking. Most people do. But trust me, it was different. I went to many seminars and I've seen people in front of thousands of people standing, and they would stand up and then would share their story, sometimes very intimate story, on front of thousands for the first time in their life without any preparation. And there was no fear. And yet I saw people who were circuit officers or missionaries, and they were interviewed and they were shaking in the pants. I'm like, what's going on? Why is there so much fear? That's one of the reasons I wrote the book, Fear to Freedom, because I realized that people are captivated by that fear. And if they could just overcome the fear of research, thinking of their own, and not being afraid of this invisible force that will punish them if they do a little bit of reading, then their life will be totally different. They will make their the decisions totally different. But here's something interesting. A lot of XGWs, when they call me, they say, Jack, I got a really big problem. I don't have the self-confidence. I don't have the courage. I'm just really weak. I'm scared all the time. And I feel like I'm just running away from pain. But there was something special about Jehovah's Witnesses that I actually remind people of how brave they actually are. It was not easy to be a Jehovah's Witness by any stretch of the imagination. It was not easy to go door to door. It was not easy to admit to your school friends and your teachers and your coworkers, your employer. It was not easy to admit that you were a Jehovah's Witness. It was not easy to give talks. It was not easy to go door to door. And yet we still did it. That is a sign of bravery. Because when there is no fear, there is no bravery. If you're not afraid, then you're not brave. You're just doing something because you're not afraid of doing something. But if there is fear, and yet, despite of that fear, you're pushing forward because you believe that what you're doing is right, that's a sign that you have a strong character and that you are brave. I remember when I was a child, I was the only one in the entire school who was a witness. And guess what? They're singing the national anthem, and everybody in the auditorium stands up except one. Yes, that's me. I had that courage, and I know you did too. And it didn't matter that all the classmates, all everybody around me were saying, get up, get up. And then the teachers came and they're like, get up, get up. And I'm like, nope, I'm not going to stand up for national anthem. There was a teacher in my history class, and they told me, oh, this teacher, I'm telling you, if you don't sing the anthem, she's going to fail you. She is such a person. Okay. Nobody liked her. She was really tired. It was still back in Poland, and everybody had to sing the anthem, and everybody had to know the words, and she was like obsessed with it. Okay. So the whole class had to stand up and sing the anthem. I stood up, but I didn't sing. But I was so scared that she's going to find out that I'm not singing, that I'm like, maybe I'm just going to move my mouth, right? I'm going to pretend that I'm singing. But she walked around the class and she's like, checking if everybody's singing, checking if everybody's singing. And at the end, she's like, you, why aren't you singing? And I'm like, oh man, there's an open window. Maybe I'll jump out of the window. But I'm like, no, as a witness, I have to stand up for what I believe. And I explained to her why I don't stand up for the national anthem, why I don't sing it. And I had the courage. And the whole class turned against me. Okay. They're like, you're crazy. She's going to now be mad at us and so on and on. But guess what? I was able to play with her quite a bit because I knew the history of the Bible. I knew the history of Abraham and Jesus and so on. And we started talking about it. And she was so impressed with my knowledge of the history that she started liking me. As a matter of fact, that moment, it was a turning point because she's like, okay, this guy, I respect him. I don't like the fact that he's not singing the anthem, but I respect the fact that he knows so much about the history, right? And it turned out to be something good. And there were many of those moments when I think about it that we had a lot of courage to stand up for what we believe. And we can't take that away from Jehovah's Witnesses. Many of them were, especially during war, they had a choice, a bullet in their head, going to concentration camp, going to prison, or deny their faith, and they chose a bullet. They chose concentration camp. They chose imprisonment. So they had that courage. And many of you still have it. The problem is we were afraid of bigger consequences. What I mean by this is if you chose to disobey the governing body and the religion, and as you believed God at that moment, that meant for you death at Armageddon. So if you choose to stand up and sing the anthem or celebrate birthdays or stuff like this, even in secrecy when nobody knew you, but at school or with your workmates and so on, you didn't acknowledge the fact, you didn't tell people you're a witness, you were afraid that you're going to die. After all, there's blood on your hands, right? Even if you didn't tell people who you are, if you don't preach. So there was this kind of a bullet, gun to our head that was saying, do this or else. Is that really bravery? I think it still is. I still think it's because we all had that choice. Somebody who really helped me, somebody who really turned my life around, I would say, when it comes to being brave. It was actually my first girlfriend. She learned to be, she studied to be a witness. And she told me her story of how tough it was for her to become a witness because her parents would beat her merciless every time she would study, every time she would go to the meeting, every time she would go to service. She came home and she was beaten. Now, my father was a Catholic and he hated the fact that we were going door to door. He accepted the fact that we're going to the meetings, but he couldn't stand the fact that we're going door to door. So every time he finds out from a neighbor or from a family member or from somebody that we went door to door, and believe me, living in a small town, everybody knows everything, then he would just, there was no end of yelling. It was really, really like war at home. Okay. So in order to avoid this, we would lie to him. We would change our clothes behind the house. We would tell them, oh, yeah, I went to my friend to do homework and stuff like this. But then I talked to her and she says, no, I wouldn't lie. God doesn't accept liars. I would tell my parents the truth no matter what the consequences were. I'm like, but you were beaten. I'm like, oh, yeah, severely every single time. I would go after school, I would get my Bible study, and I would come home. The father would ask me, where were you? And I would tell him I went to study the Bible, and he would beat me every time. Not with hands. He would use sticks, extension cords, belts, rubber hoses, you name it, right? Really, really, the girl had a lot of post-traumatic stress because of this. Now, at one point, she wanted to get baptized. She went to the assembly. He came with police during the assembly and dragged her out of it. Right? Could just imagine that scene that it caused. And then took her home and beat the crap out of her again. And she's telling me all the story. I'm like, wow, the amount of courage, the amount of bravery that this young girl had because she believed in something. And yet, like she was able to do it, to stand up against her own father. And it's countless examples of witnesses who had that courage. And I tell you, you have it too. You have it too. But now you get to stand up for what you believe in. You just got to tap into that courage. Okay. You still have it. And that's one of the reasons when at the beginning, I was a PMO. I was afraid. We are afraid of something. And I was afraid of admitting it to my wife. I was afraid of admitting it to my family, that I started questioning and I started, having different beliefs because I knew the consequences. But at the same time, Jehovah's Witnesses were the ones who taught me to tell the truth, no matter who's standing in front of me, whether it's a judge or a teacher or an employer or your own family member. You tell them the truth, whatever is that you believe the truth to be, no matter what the consequences will be. And with that mindset, I'm like, I have to do the same. If I had the courage to go to Catholics door to door or people from other religion and to my family members and so and tell them what I believe is right, now I changed my beliefs, but the conviction has to be the same. The strength has to be the same. The courage has to be the same. And guess what? There is no greater reward for being courageous than living an authentic life, knowing that people actually will respect you. They might not agree with you, but they will respect you for the fact that you stood up for what you believe in. It was even the same story with my wife. My wife did not wake up at the beginning. But a friend of mine, she said, you know what? I understand that you guys going through a hard time, but your wife really respects you. I'm like, really? How come? Says, you're standing up for what you believe in. And she respects that, even though she disagrees with you. And we might not see it at first, okay? Because people disagree with you. They will not tell you they respect you, but they do. Because that's what we respect. When we see that somebody has that conviction, we might not agree with them, but when you see that they're certain and people fight for what they believe is right, okay, then we gain respect in people's eyes. We might not get their approval of what we believe in, but we'll get the respect. Don't lose it. You have that courage. You have it in you. You have that strength. Tap into it. You had it when you were a witness. Don't lose it as an ex-witness. Thanks for watching. I'll see you in the next one.